particularly with this bill alone, and I do want to mention that fees in the Secretary of State's office are set by statute and by rule. So the bill before you, if the fees remain where they are, will bring in 1.86 million a year or 3.7 million a biennium. Then when we adjust the fees in our rules to be commensurate with the fees that are in this bill, we will bring in 5.5 million a biennium in additional revenue. And as you know, the last biennium, our office generated 57 million in revenue for the biennium.
And just compliment to you and the secretary and staff and team for work on this. But I don't think this is it's not that you guys don't have other things to do, but you went back and looked these fees and you did that analysis for us. And just we appreciate that. Recognize the great work that's been in the office. Does anybody have any questions for Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, yes. And forgive me if this has already been provided to the committee. If it has, you can just resend it. And if not, if you could prepare something on the Senate floor where, assuming that we pass this out, we've got to carry it on the Senate floor. And there's some folks there that just don't take kindly to taxes or fee hikes. And so it'd be helpful if I had a table that showed for each fee when last it was raised and what the amount was when last it was raised. So, you know, one of them might say it was last raised in 1990 and it was $2 at that time and it was raised to $3, that sort of thing. I just, it's one thing to say some haven't been raised in 40 years, but if we can demonstrate that, you know, the preponderance of them just really haven't been raised and they need to be bumped up, that'd be helpful in terms of an exhibit. So that's the first ask. The second is just an update, since we just look at the appropriations, but I would, if you can, a quick update on amendments. And I think you were involved, Ms. Wheeler. I was contacted by a constituent over a year ago where they said, gee, I think it was an amendment they needed to file, and it had to be done hard copy, couldn't be done online. And I asked Secretary Buchanan about it, and he said that would require a software update of some kind, but he was aware that other states, you are able to do much more online than you can in Wyoming. And I'm just, as an update on the software, if you could.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Senator. Absolutely. So being able to do more than your initial filings online and annual reports online has been something that our office has wanted to pursue for quite some time. And I'll first start by telling you that our business filing system, it's not software you can go buy off the shelf. It is a custom-built system, and it is built around all statutory requirements. So for instance, when you form an entity, the system, whether it's in paper form or online, our system does a name availability check to make sure that we don't have duplicative names. It makes sure that you have a valid registered agent at a physical address. It also has the triggers built in for when annual reports are due. And if annual reports aren't filed, then the entity is administratively dissolved. So it is a complex system. Now, in order to file amendments online, what we are really looking at being able to accomplish is more than just file it online, let it go. We need to have verification and credentialing of who has authority to file that amendment online so that we don't have an instance of corporate hijacking. You don't want someone to be able to come in, file an amendment, change the name of your entity, take over ownership. So that is the one area that we are focusing on. We also, at the request of Senator Hicks, are looking to our developer as to what it will cost to implement online filing for amendments.
So that raises an interesting question.
So I think
A couple of questions. Did you have anything else?
No, that's helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So in that, are you guys putting together an exception request for the next budget for what this would take?
Mr. Chairman, that is what we would like to bring to you, yes.
Okay. I mean, no one ever wants to ask for an exception request, but ultimately, if we're going to do that, it's not for free. But just back to your comment a minute ago, so as you mail in an amendment, to articles of incorporation, organization, whatever it might be, whatever the entity might be. As you mail that in, I'm just trying to figure out, as you talk about credentialing and verification, I mean, how do you do that when it comes in hard copy? I mean, anybody can print the form off, the blank form, fill it out and mail it in. What kind of process do you go through as you to verify the credentialing and the other items of verification that you just mentioned? How do you do it now when you get a hard copy?
Mr. Chairman, that's a great question. Now, when we get amendments in, we have our registrars who manually process it. And I will tell you, we get over 17,500 paper filings a month, the majority of which are the amendments. They look at the amendment and they will also pull up the entity and validate that the individual signing is an authorized person to file the amendment.
And so it's all done manually at this point.
Yes, Mr.
So
Chairman.
it's eyes on, they get the piece of paper, they look up, they compare maybe the last annual report to see if the person who signed this is at least the former registered agent or the officer or somebody mentioned. So that's all done manually now.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman.
And then one other quick question. So did you guys do some kind of, just backing up on the vice chairman's question, did you guys do some kind of spreadsheet when you're doing your analysis and called? Is that in some format that you don't have to go out and create a special list to show those fees? And did you do something like that?
Mr. Chairman, I do.
See, I knew
one.
you'd be you all over it. That's the way this is. It's all a setup. See, look at that. So, once again, the Secretary of State's office comes through.
Well, thank you. And I'm happy to provide, should this bill pass out of committee, whomever will carry it on the floor, I'm happy to provide talking points as well as this chart.
Now, is this one of your team members over here over your shoulder?
Mr. Chairman, that is Kelly Janes. She is the director of our compliance division.
Okay.
Yes.
So she's in charge of manually pulling those up and verifying all the things we just talked about in the amendment.
No, Mr. Chairman, that is our incredible team in our business division. We have a team of 10.
Well, I know that sometimes your office is staffed tightly enough that it's all hands on deck, and sometimes you're even in the room doing things. It's not just it's everybody. Everybody's in there working at times trying to keep up with the paper crush that you have.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and I fully anticipate it will be an all hands on deck after the mail starts coming in from the snowstorm.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions for Deputy Wheeler?
One more quick.
Go ahead,
just a
Mr.
note.
Vice Chair.
So as long as you're evaluating the software and the upgrades, and this may already be on the list, but in terms of security, if you could take a look at token security of some kind, I've got accounts that I have to have, whether it's a YubiKey, it's actually 3-factor authentication. You have to have the name, the password, and then you have to have this token in order to log in and get anything done. And it really, it's a whole order of magnitude jump in terms of security. And I derive a great deal of comfort from it. I hope it's not a false comfort, but you might take a look at bumping up that as well. And probably you already are, I don't know.
Sounds like blockchain to me, anyway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senator. We will certainly take a hard look at that. And I know my tech division, our administration director, they are always on top of that, and particularly making sure we have all security in place.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? Is there anybody in the waiting room to testify on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, I do have several people in the waiting room, but at this point, I don't see anyone that has specifically raised their hand to comment on this bill.
Okay, so committee, what's your pleasure? Bill's been moved and seconded, moved by Senator Kinski and seconded by Senator Steinmetz. Are there any further discussion or amendments to the bill? Question having been called, go ahead and call the roll. Karen?
On House Bill 148, Senator Grew. Senator Hicks excused?
Yeah, did he give any instructions?
No, sir, he did not.
Okay, well, he's excused.
Thank you. Senator Kinski?
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz? Chairman Perkins?
Aye.
4 ayes, 1 excused.
Thank you.
I'll carry it.
All right.
And if I can get a copy of that exhibit from you, and does it also have the grand total of the fees that you collect each year? I think you said $52 million. The email is clogged, so sneaker net is the best.
Yeah, there's a lot of people watching, and luckily, I think with the blizzard, a lot of people had extra time on their hands to email their legislators this week. So, it's great. It's nice to know that people are listening, paying attention. So with that, do you want to do? Okay, we'll go ahead and next one, we'll do agency fee revisions, which is House Bill 49. We're going to go off the engrossed version. So with that, agency fee revisions, again, I wonder, Karen, are you aware of the differences that they did in the bill? What the House did to the bill?
Mr. Chairman, I haven't had a chance to study it, but I do believe one thing that they did had to do with the parolee and those fees through the Department of Corrections.
They added on page 2, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, they added 713-407 probation and parolee fees.
Well, that was in the original bill. And I think that's what they took out.
I've got it backwards. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So here's my question for the committee. It occurs to me that, as I understand it, that there'll be a number of incarcerated individuals that qualify for the $1,400 payment that comes out in the America Recovers Act. And so does that change the dynamic of 713-407? I thought the discussion around that was that that the incarcerated individuals wouldn't have the resources to pay the fees that were provided in there. And so, but with the America Recovers Act, a significant number of them will have $1,400. And I think some of it will some of that goes to unpaid child support and some other things like that. But the other side of that is that they would have some money available to pay for some of the services that they receive. So does that change anything with respect to 713-407 in the committee's mind? And you don't have to answer that question now, but keep that in mind. So that was probably certainly one of the larger changes that they did.
Mr. Chairman, the question is not whether it changes anything in my mind, whether it changes anything in the House's mind, but I was satisfied with 407 the way it was because the department had the ability to reduce or waive the fee if it represented a hardship to the parolee, probationer, or inmate. And that didn't satisfy them over there, but I guess I'd kind of like to look at adding it right back in.
Okay. So I'm just going through that. I think that's the change. I don't see.
Mr. Chairman, there were 2 amendments that were accepted. The first one, yes, appears primarily on page 2, lines 4 through 21, and page 3, lines 1 through 8. The second one had to do with page 10, lines 9 through 13, which is food licensing, and it's deposited to the different fees and where they're funding.
So that affect 3511-211? So you said it went to page 10 line?
On the original bill, page 10, lines 9 through 13.
Okay, no,
were
that's above.
struck.
All right.
But those were the only 2 changes. So the primary change I think that we're talking about for the parolees is the page 2 carrying forward to page 3.
Okay, so originally we said 50% of the fees collected shall be credited to the general fund. And what kind of licensure is this? Department of Ag. licensing, food events,
So they
and they changed.
they stripped it out. They just dropped it. Fees shall be specified. So where does, so before, this must have gone into a special revenue fund. That's, I mean, if the original bill had 50% of the fees collected pursuant to paragraphs B1 through 3 of this section shall be credited to the general fund. The remainder of any fees collected under this section shall be distributed as follows. And so there was originally they were going to take 50% of those fees and put it to the general fund. Do we have a set of green books in here? Right there. So this is 35,7, 120.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, what was that?
he's just catching up that they got rid of the inmate fees.
Yeah.
What was the other changes they made?
On page 10 of the original bill, Larry, they deleted lines 9 through 13, which is a redirect of 50% of the fees back to the general fund.
So where did they say?
Well, Drew's looking that up. We think it's in a special revenue fund in the Department of Ag.
All right, so under B. Now, fees collected under this section shall be distributed as follows. This is current statute. In any city, county, or district without a local health department, the Department of Agriculture shall receive 90% of the amount of the fee collected, and the Department of Health shall receive 10%. And then 2, that was 1. Romanet 2 was in any county, city, or district with a local health department again established. Local health department shall receive 85% of the fee collected. The Department of Agriculture shall receive 10%, and the Department of Health shall receive 5%. Revenues deposited into a special account and shall be used to defer the costs associated with the food safety program. And so that's both of those. So
they just restored back to the current distribution.
yeah, it just went back to distribution, which goes to local health departments,
State health department.
and to help with the food safety program. That's all it did.
The way we had it worded, 50% would have gone through the general
General
fund, and 50% would have gone through the normal.
So
distribution.
let's see, my guess is that there must have been some testimony. So those are the two changes to the bill. That's right, Karen. So we understand that. Is there some people that are in the waiting room to testify on this bill?
I do have one person who has
Okay,
raised their
maybe
hand. Couple of them.
I get it. I think they're just trying to preserve that money for the local health departments. But so let's go ahead and let's admit this person. And
I just wonder what the fee increase would have resulted in any reduction.
so good morning. So we have, well, Ms. Hudspeth, you were first. You appeared on the screen first, so we'll pick on you first. Welcome to our little committee this morning.
Good.
Do you have something? What would you like to share with us this morning?
No, good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm with the Department of Health, Healthcare Licensing and Surveys. And I just want to say that we have no concerns or comments regarding the healthcare licensing fee increases, but I do stand ready to answer any questions the committee may have.
Okay. Did you attend the House Committee hearing by any chance, Ms. Hudspeth?
Mr. Chairman, yes, I did.
And do you remember, was there any particular testimony or reason that was presented why they went back to the original distribution that exists in the current statute that you can remember?
Mr. Chairman, my recollection is our fees haven't been raised for, I think, since 1997, 1998, and it was just an effort to generate revenue.
And so as right now, do you have any numbers or any information to us about of the distribution? So you have these fees are collected and then distributed back out to local counties and cities and towns and local health departments to support the food safety program. Do you?
No, Mr. Chairman, I'm with the Department of Health for the healthcare licensing fee.
Okay.
Yeah, we got Julie Cook with the clock.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So I think we have somebody else that's going to have some information for us about that. Thank you for that. Anybody have any questions for Ms. Hudspeth?
No.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Ms. Cook. Ms. Cook, welcome. We're glad to see you this morning. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, Mr. Chairman.
What do you have for us this morning?
I was just here to answer any questions, and I saw you were having a few questions about the food licensing distribution. And what you read in statute is how those are distributed. And the testimony that occurred on this bill was they were looking to help more of the local county health departments that receive their share with the increase. Our share currently does go into a special revenue fund, and that funds one of our employees that we have within our Consumer Health Services division. And in addition, we do use a lot of that fee on our licensing system.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, do you have any numbers? How much as you look at this, do you have any idea how much this generates for the Department of Health? Or excuse me, but this special revenue fee generates in a year? The Department of Ag, excuse me.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as in our fiscal note, we raise approximately $282,000 a year based on licensing. And so the increase that's how much we have been earning. So an increase would double that by another $282,000.
And so, and as I understand, the current distribution distributes it back to local governments and to various, depending on whether you have a combined county health or you have a combination health, but it goes back to these local health departments for public health. Okay. And so, all right. So thank you. I appreciate that. Anybody have anything else for us, Ms. Cook?
No, I'm not. Don't. Any questions you have, please let me know.
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Cook? Okay. Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming and helping us understand that a little bit better this morning.
Thank you.
And then Miss, I can't see that name. What is that?
Sides.
Ms. Sides, go ahead. Good. Welcome.
Good morning, Chairman and Committee. I'm Dawn Sides, and the Field Service Administrator with the Department of Corrections over probation and parole. Director Shannon is testifying on another bill and asked me to sit in and answer any questions you may have regarding the fees that the Department of Corrections put into this bill that was removed, and just offer any information that you may have.
And thank you. What was we understood it, first of all, the department had the ability or has the ability, even with the department has the ability to waive fees if it creates an undue hardship on any inmate or other incarcerated person. Is that correct?
Chairman and Committee, yeah, that the way it was written into the bill is if there was a hardship or they were just had other things such as child support, restitution, things like that, that the money that they had would go to pay those types of things prior to us asking for the fees, whether they were the supervision, UA fees, or compact fees that were put into this bill originally.
And so one of the questions that I had about this is under the America Recovers Act. It's my understanding there's going to be, I don't know, but there's going to certainly a significant number of incarcerated individuals are going to be eligible to receive the $1,400 payment. And I'm wondering, do you have any information about how many individuals might be able to qualify for that are in the, under the supervision of the Wyoming Department of Corrections?
Chairman and committee, I don't have any knowledge right now. Just to keep in mind, this bill for the fees was just for probationers, parolees, and conditional releases. It does not have any fees attached to it for the inmates that are currently incarcerated in one of our correctional facilities. So just to be that clear with that, but I would say probably, but it's just a guess on my part, that the majority of them would qualify for the incentive.
Right. Most of those individuals, one of their conditions of parole or probation is that they be gainfully employed or at least seeking gainful employment. Therefore, they would be filing tax returns. You would expect them to be filing tax returns as part of that. And if they're filing tax returns, then they will most likely will be eligible for the $1,400.
Chairman, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, anything else for us, Ms. Sides?
Just for your awareness, with these fees, what we had done was said we estimated, because we have never collected fees, but based on what other states had collected, we thought we could collect about $1 million a year. And what we did was offered up to pay for 6 positions with this funding to offset the general fund costs. But with the fees that were removed, we've got 6 existing positions that we're working through another committee to try to get reinstated if the fees do not get placed back into this bill, because we've already lost 19 positions. I would hate to lose an additional 6 because of the fees that portion of this bill.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think that's helpful. Thank you, Ms. Sides. Any other questions for Ms. Sides?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
So as I read the original version of the bill on page 2, if you have that, lines 9 and 10, it says, any person who is supervised by the department, no, excuse me, here I'll just start at the beginning, except as otherwise provided in this subsection, a probationer, parolee, or person committed to the department. I interpreted that to mean inmates, but you said this would not apply to inmates.
Vice Chairman Kinski and committee, no, but our intent was not to have the inmates have to pay for this. The figures that we put together were based on the probationers, parolees, and conditional releases.
So does the phrase person committed to the department mean something other than an inmate?
Vice Chair Kinski, all I know is what our intention was that it would only be for those other individuals.
Well, and so just to be clear, Ms. Sides, to follow up on that point, probationers, well, certainly parolees are committed to the department under the supervision of the department. Probationers, are they also committed and under the supervision of the department?
Yes, they are.
All right, so maybe we need to clarify that language a little bit.
So, Mr. Chairman, there's, in my world, which is limited in this, probationer, parolee, or somebody in the poke, that's the only 3 there are. There must be, unless there's a 4th category of somebody who's not in the poke, they're not a probationer, they're not a parolee, but they're committed to the department. And I'm trying to think what that might be if they were out on.
Vice Chairman Kinski, there's a term called a conditional release, and it's in statute, and they're neither on probation nor on parole, but they can be sent to the Department of Corrections for supervision for as long as they're placed on supervision by the courts.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, does that, so they're not in prison, but they're on conditional release?
That's correct, Senator.
So it's a lot like probation, but it has a different name.
That's correct.
It's kind of like double secret probation.
Yeah. Okay.
That
So
helps.
if we were trying to clarify that, Ms. Sides, if it was a probation or parolee or person committed to the, I'm just trying to figure out how we clarify that this does not apply to it. When we refer to incarcerated persons or inmates or incarcerated persons, would that exclude probationers, parolees, and those on conditional release? Do you know?
Chairman, I think that's above my pay grade to be able to tell you whether that would exclude inmates. I think if you clearly stated just probationers, parolees, and conditional releases and left it at that, that would clarify that the people that are on supervision with the department would be the people that this bill would be affected by.
So we could call it conditional releasees?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions from Ms. Sides, members?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
if, assuming that we add this provision back into the bill, an exhibit that you may already have provided to us showing how much you anticipate that this would raise. And then I think you said you did a survey of other states. How many other states do this? Just a one pager. I don't want to, we're legislators. If you give us too much, we're likely to get confused. You know, how many other states do it and kind of the range of fees that they charge. It'll help on the floor presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Dawn, is that in the fiscal note? Do you know?
Part of it is, but we can put together a one-page document for you.
Yeah, if you could, yeah, kind of update that in a format and just get it to us. And probably the best thing is probably send it to Karen, because the rest of us, our emails are so clogged these days. If you could send it to Karen Vaughn, so our Secretary of Appropriations. Karen, it's just the usual governmental. You send it to a legislator. I'm not going to give Karen Vaughn's email out over the YouTube today. So did you know how to find that, right?
Yeah. Yes, I do, sir.
Thank you, Don. Any other questions? Thank you, Don. Appreciate your help today.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else to testify on this bill? Okay. Hi, Luke. How are you doing? Welcome.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, good morning. My name is Lukesh. I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Environmental Quality. Director Parfit sends his regrets for being unable to be here this morning. The proposed bill raises fees within the Department of Environmental Quality in the storage tank program, air quality program, and the land quality program. And I just be here today to stand for questions.
Okay, anybody have any questions for Deputy Director Bass?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mr. Vice Chair.
Assuming that we pass this bill out for purposes of presentation on the floor, it may be an exhibit you've already prepared, but showing each fee, the last time it was raised, how much it was before it was raised the last time, how much it raises now, and how much you're projected to raise with the increase would be helpful. Let me see this. And so this is, Mr. Chairman, I think this is DEQ is going to be, which is that I'm on our original version, page 10, 211. I think that's DEQ. Talks about the Clean Air Act. And I think DEQ extends through, they do the tanks.
Thanks, the rest of the bill.
Well, on page 15 of the original bill, we get into access to central registry records pertaining to adult protection cases.
Yeah, it'd be through tax.
So if he can give us something that's simple and clear for purposes of floor presentation, that'd be helpful.
I think you probably already have that, Luke. Could you send that over to, again, please send it to our committee secretary, Karen Vaughn.
Mr. Chairman, that won't be a problem.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Ed? Thank you, Luke. Appreciate it. Ms. O'Connor, how are you this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm doing well. Thank you. How are you?
We're fine. Welcome. And what do you have?
Good. Thank you. Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm really here to help answer questions and maybe just help provide a little bit of context as Vice Chairman Kinski pointed out, central registry is also a part of this bill. We in this bill are not actually proposing a fee increase. We are instead asking for flexibility to be able to potentially increase fees in our rules if indeed we need to do that. And I say that because as a result of our step 2 reductions, we did shift the central registry model from a general fund model to an enterprise model, where these fees are actually going to pay for the operations of the central registry. So right now, at present, we don't anticipate a fee increase. We believe that we could, if all data were to indicate the same amount of registries coming in and our same processing time, we wouldn't anticipate a fee increase for about 10 years or so. Again, our decision to make an increase in rules would be based on data and influx in central registry screens, and really how are we able to leverage our dollars in order to operate our central registry. So just some context and a little nuance between maybe some of the other increases that we're seeing in the fees and what we're intending to do in this bill for DFS and for central registry.
Okay, thank you. And I don't, just for the record at the beginning, I don't know that you gave us your name and your position and who you represent or who you're with.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did, and I apologize. My name is Roxanne O'Connor, and I'm the Support Services Senior Administrator for Department of Family Services.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. O'Connor?
Mr. Chairman, so I just want to make sure, Ms. O'Connor, we have 2 sections calling out a central registry. Page 3 of the original bill was 14-3-214, confidentiality of records, penalties, attendance of school officials at interviews. This is, I think that's DFS.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, yes, that's correct. So we have central registry located in 2 different statutes, Title 14 for Child Protective Services and Title 35 for Adult Protective Services. Okay. So you'll see both of those referenced in the bill.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, just in case some of our colleagues on the floor might get uneasy about just saying in an amount determined by rule. So it would be helpful, one, to know the current $10 fee, when that was last raised, if at all, how much money that raises. And you're proposing to double that to $20, do I understand? Or that's what you're thinking? You want to have rulemaking authority to adjust the fee, but you said are you thinking about raising it to 20?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, that would be based on the data. So we don't have a number set that we would raise the fee to. We would look at the data. We would see how much we would need to continue operations for the central registry. But right now, we have the ability to operate for about 10 years on what we have in our special revenue fund. So we don't even anticipate a fee increase that would be needed even within rules for about that time.
So interesting. Okay. And currently, currently it's the fee. It's just a $10 fee, but you do have the ability to make adjustments to that according to your own rules if for whatever circumstances individuals might find themselves, or is it just based upon the cost of operating the central registry?
Mr. Chairman, right now we hold to the fee that is in statute, so that's the $10 fee, and so that is what everybody is charged, with the exception of some of the requirements that we have in DFS for like foster parents, adoption, those types of things. But for the vast majority of employers, we charge the $10 central registry fee per the statute. And so we don't have flexibility in the amount that we charge.
Okay, and then how long? Do you know how long it's been $10?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we have done quite a bit of research in regards to the history of Central Registry to find an exact answer to that. We can say with confidence that it has been since 1986. It may have been prior to that, but with confidence we have found that it at least goes back that far.
And you said, if I understood what you said earlier, with the $10 fee, you think that remains sufficient enough to operate the registry for 10 more years?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's what we anticipate.
Okay, and all right, thank you. I appreciate that.
Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Vice Chair.
I didn't think you could do anything nowadays for $10.
If you get $10 from enough people.
So they're operating, so that $10 is more than enough to operate, and they've got reserves sufficient to operate for 10 years. That's,
No, I don't think she says she has reserves to operate for 10 years. I think she says there might be some reserve, but she thinks they think that number will be sufficient to operate for the next 10 years if they keep collecting the $10. I think that's what her testimony was. Is that right, Ms. O'Connor?
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. Yes, with what we have existing in our special revenue and our continuation of assessing the $10 fee, we anticipate based on the data that we'll be able to continue to operate for 10 more years without an increase in fees.
why wouldn't we bump it to 20 and use the money to offset other costs of the program? I thought that was the idea of assessing all these agency fees.
So what are the costs that, can you tell us or help us understand a little bit what the costs are that when you say the cost of operating the registry, what does that include? What are you using that money for?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. It is actually mainly personnel. So we have 2 full-time personnel that process about 23,000 Central Registry applications a year. And that is the actual screening, the looking up of individuals, and the reporting out on whether or not an individual has been substantiated upon for abuse or neglect, and then reporting that out to the employer. So it's mainly personnel, and then we have, your basic standard office supplies, mailings, so really your 100 and 200 series.
And so what kind of IT support does it take to run the Central Registry?
Mr. Chairman, we operate currently, our Central Registry really is based on Excel spreadsheets and access databases. So our IT support is minimal right now. We are looking at ways to modernize our Central Registry processes, move towards an online application, but we are utilizing our ETS direct bill team, which we already have funding for and budget for, to be able to help us move in more of a progressive manner for Central Registry applications and screenings.
And so that's also covered by is that also covered, your IT support covered by the fees that you collect for the Central Registry?
Mr. Chairman, yes, that's correct. We've moved our whole Central Registry to an enterprise model, and so the fees go to support all of the Central Registry, including IT, yes.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. O'Connor? I can see wheels turning, but thank you. Thank you, Ms. O'Connor. We appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Is there anybody else, Karen? Okay, we'll go ahead and close off public comment. Members, what's your pleasure with House Bill 49?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vice President,
move the bill.
is there a motion on the bill? Is there a second?
Second.
And a second by Senator Guru. Discussion or amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vice President.
I would reinstate the stricken language on the original bill on page 2, line 4 to the bottom of the page. And then on page 3, line 1 through 8, reinstate that language. Mr. Chairman, I've got a further amendment if that one passes.
There's a second?
Second.
Second by Senator Steinmetz. Discussion? All's in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. Okay, motion's carried.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vice President.
go back to page 2. On line 8. After A, strike the word probationer, parole, or person.
Mr. Vice President, are you on?
So
the
what is it?
original
What does he
bill?
want us to strike, Mr. Vice President?
Are you on the original bill?
Or, and person, and insert the words non-incarcerated person. So it gets to the issue of the conditional
Okay.
release. Instead of enumerating every one of them, it would now read, except as otherwise provided in this section, a non-incarcerated person committed to the department and who is supervised by the department shall pay the fees.
Okay.
So it doesn't call out probation.
It doesn't call them
employees.
specifically.
It just says if they're not incarcerated, but they're under the control of the department, they pay the fees.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Vice Chairman.
I'm willing to second it. I just, she seemed to hesitate on the word incarceration, but she was clear that they knew what probationer.
If they've somehow got a cut out of that, we can back it off to 35% or, something, some other number, but otherwise, all of a sudden you've doubled the budget that they've got to expend. And I don't know that that's, the intent. Maybe that's the house's intent, but I don't think that was our intent.
Yeah, the way I look at it is their budget's exactly the same as it was before.
Right.
It didn't change it.
Yeah,
So my preference would be to leave it at 50%. And if we end up
Well, you
going to
could-
conference committee on the bill.
we could move it to 65 so they get their 15 as a step 3. I'm sorry, that's not funny.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would just leave the
Existing
proposed
language.
as the existing language.
Second.
Okay. Got that motion in a second. Further discussion? Do you understand the amendment, Karen?
I'm sorry, sir. You had said that we were restoring the language on page 10, lines 9, 10, 11.
Right, the language, yeah, so it goes back to the original, what it was in the original bill.
Yeah, I think you just reinstate 9 through 13, isn't it?
Yes, lines 9 through 13. And I just want to be correct. We're not changing anything in the percentage. We're just restoring that language, correct?
Yep. Yeah, we may do that later, but for right now, we may do that in committee of the whole or later as the bill moves through. Anything else on this bill?
Call for the question.
Well, I have a question just for discussion, Mr. Chairman. It's hard to get enthusiastic about these two DFS provisions when they've got money to operate for 10 years. Somehow the message didn't get through to them. They should have bumped it to $20 and allocated some portion of their overhead. I just can't believe they're processing these things for $10. But if that's the case, the idea of the fee increase was to try and find a way that these fees could alleviate some of the burden on the general fund, and we don't achieve that with those two. They're in the bill. I don't see any sense taking them out. It's going to be a little harder to defend on the floor.
Oh, I don't disagree with that. Did you have something, Senator Drew?
I just wanted to make sure before this got to the floor that just like the other bill we talked about, we're going to get a sheet with a one pager with a list of all those fees, so it's easier to walk through.
You're going to get
Questions
sheets.
come.
Each department's going to send you their own version of what we asked for.
Or even if it's all just one, I mean, just all the fees that are here in a sheet, so we can reference it easily when the questions come. We don't have to go through the bill and.
Yeah, we need something like the Secretary of State presented.
Yeah.
This was the last year, this was increased, this is what.
First time that's-
Shows just how sedate we are. on
It's
the
a 15%
Committee.
15% of power. So that's part of the step 3 reduction. It's one of our step 3 reductions.
I teach you guys to be tight-fisted.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's a lot of people who think the Senate Appropriations is in the dark, so it works out well. I'm kind of inclined to just remove the central registry stuff. I'm just kind of inclined to yank that out
So
because they don't need it. And
that currently they have a special enterprise fund that this goes.
it's paying for this, and it's paying their way, and I think it's going to pay their way for the next 10 years.
So why don't we just appropriate out of that fund back to the Department of Family Services if there's money? If we're gonna increase it to offset some general
Yes,
fund
I
expenditure.
think it's one of those two, but I mean, it seems to me that the problem I have, the concept is fine. I think pulling it back to the general fund, think starts to be a little bit problematic, particularly if you let them set the order. What they'll do is, shoot, they may go out and lower it if they're allowed to set it by rule. They've got enough for 10 years. It means they've got too much for right now.
That's what I was thinking. We need to turn around and take one FTE and off the general fund and put it off onto this special registry or something like that.
Well, and maybe that's, maybe we should check that out. We should find out whether those two folks are on the general fund, whether those two positions on the general fund, and if they're not, we should move them off the general fund
Yeah.
into
That's
this
what I'm
account.
thinking.
Yeah,
That's a good-
which is, I think
Leave
that's
the
what
fee
you're saying. I
increase
think that's a
in.
good idea.
There you
And
go.
then move on. If they may be federal funds, they are remaining, but we need to find out if they are, just move them on to their enterprise.
Well, why don't we, so let's not do anything right now, and so you're gonna take that on. I'll take on the correctional facility one. Do you have time, or get somebody to take on the DFS one?
You want to do that?
We just want to check and
Yeah,
check and see.
They're probably still listening, but I'll email.
O'Connor, yeah. Corinne or Miss, is Miss O'Connor still on the? Miss O'Connor, can you come back on for a sec? Hi.
Hi, Mr. Chairman, can you
go ahead and introduce yourself again, since you're back.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Roxanne O'Connor. I'm the Support Services Senior Administrator for Department of Family Services. Mr. Chairman, I think if I understood your question, you're wondering if our two personnel, our two central registry personnel, are also paid for with these central registry fees. And yes, they are. As part of our step 2 reductions, we moved their funding source from general fund to our special revenue fund, where these central registry fees are deposited.
So I think their question would be, if there was a fee increase, and so that there would be a surplus in the special revenue fund, let's say that it was double, because that's kind of been the process. Where would the department apply, or where would the department apply the excess of the special revenue funds that were generated if the department increased the amount by rule?
Mr. Chairman, if we increase the amount by rule, we would apply that to the special revenue fund to operate the central registry. And so that is what we are trying to accomplish, is make sure that we have some flexibility if in the event that our central registry fees do not cover our expenses. Currently, we do operate at a deficit of about $120,000 a year that we're going to have to use the special revenue fund to cover. And so what we would intend for an increase in central registry fees to do is to start to cover that operational deficit that we operate under.
Well, now I'm confused, because before you told us that this was enough to cover your operations for 10 years, but now you've just told us that there's about $100,000 a year deficit. So help us, we must have misunderstood what you said before. Can you help clarify for us?
Of course, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize if I'm not being clear. In our special revenue fund, in our budget, we have about $2 million. So we will use that $2 million to offset our deficit that we're operating under right now for about 10 years. And then that
you have a reserve of $2 million that you're amortizing over the next 10 years for your projected deficits.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct.
I got it. All right. Thank you very much. That's helpful.
Great, thank you.
Questions? Any other question, Ms. Connor, while we have her back on the line? Mr. Vice Chair?
Let's just get confused again if you ask another question.
Ms. O'Connor, what would the fee need to be increased to completely cover the deficit and maybe generate a little bit extra?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, I don't have that information right offhand. I'm happy to get that to you as quickly as we possibly can.
Okay, please do.
Send it to Karen Vaughn.
I sure,
okay, thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman, I will do that.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. O'Connor? Thank you very much. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thank you.
So
you might as well be in the legislature, Karen.
So let's make sure we've got all our bases covered. Page 2 is Department of Corrections. They're going to send us information. Page 3 is DFS. Page 5 is Department of Health. We had somebody from DOH that's going to send us some information, didn't we? Okay, and then page 9, I think that's Department of Ag, 35-7-124.
And she gave us the information, and it was just, she's not going to say anything, but she gave us the information. That's that they basically double it. Their budget was 281. They use it for personnel, and we doubled it. So anyway.
Okay, and then it's DEQ and DFS are the balance of the bill.
Right. So
and DEQ is sending us something.
Yeah. So still, call for the question. Yeah. Okay. Have the question. If there's any other questions or discussion, ready for the question? Go ahead and call the roll, Karen.
Thank you. On House Bill 49 as amended, Senator Guru. Senator Hicks. Senator Kinsky.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz. Chairman Perkins.
Aye.
5 ayes.
And then, okay. Can you give me Director Shannon's phone number, please? Thank you. All right, next bill, what time is it?
Do you want to carry this?
What's that? Okay, thank you. Any volunteers? I'll go ahead and take this one. That's fine. So now we'll see, we're 9:13, so we're still going along. We have so we've done 49. We've done, it's 150. Let's do 150 really quick.
That's well plowed ground, isn't it?
Yeah, this was a,
Let's see, to the House, we sent a 21-page bill to the House. And they sent back a 21-page bill. All right.
okay. What did the House do to the bill? The first page looks exactly the same.
I'm sorry, sir, I did not have the engrossed copy.
Page,
What the House
They
did
cut
to the
out
bill-
page 2 to the middle of page 3. They cut out the appropriation for public welfare emergencies.
I'll go ahead and get the amendment printed for you. Just a moment.
why did they do that? Go ahead.
They deleted entirely and inserted, the committee shall vote whether to recommend the legislature should meet in a special session pursuant to Wyoming Constitutional Article 3, Section 7, to consider the acceptance or expenditure of the federal funds. Upon receipt of the committee's recommendation, the presiding officers of each house shall initiate a poll of the members of the legislature in accordance with rules of the legislature. So basically polling the members, coming back to the legislature, which I think is a great addition. It was something we talked about when we were working on this bill, and I think it's really important to come back to the members, so.
Yeah. Okay, that's the only amendment?
No.
Where do you see another amendment, Senator?
Well, I'm on page 2 of the original, and we had a section 9-2-1014.3. Oh, okay, no, it's still there. Sorry about that.
Yeah, one's double-sided and one's single-sided.
Yeah, wow, okay.
I think,
So that's the only amendment they have in the digest?
I'm thinking that most of these pages are, look, 3.
15 15 lines which? Management Council.
That's that management. Let's see.
Yeah, so I think we're just giving,
That just streamlined that process. That process was just too cumbersome.
yeah,
That's,
and
yeah.
I'm glad they did that.
So let me see.
You're on management council. You wanted to,
Good.
You wanted to-
Supplemental
good.
program
Yeah.
with the police shall notify.
yeah. If you've been on management
Request.
council, the less the management council has to do. It's not this bad thing. It got kind of expanded. The role got
Okay, so they
expanded
cut
last
out
year.
notify the request the management council to request the joint appropriations committee. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's
The
a,
management council's
I think
cut
that's
out.
a good play. I think it's one of those things you just can't, it just gets really close to being an impermissible delegation. Yep.
So this guy has to ask this guy to ask that guy to ask that guy?
Yep. Well, hopefully you got to get back, you got to get back so the legislature can act on these things because you can't, there's no authority in the management council or the joint appropriations committee to do anything on our own. Well, JAC, we just do our thing and then it goes back to the members. What? Yeah.
And what's X? Dollar level in excess of X. Well, it only follows that process if the federal money is greater than a certain dollar amount. I don't know.
He's looking at the,
I'm looking at this summary that says if greater than X dollars. No, that's the LISRA.
A report anything over 100,000, but the 10 million is what he has to respond.
Right.
Right?
Yeah, the 10 million is the
So
Sherry
that's-
Steinmetz Emergency Tunnel Collapse Memorial.
But after 100,000, he has to come back.
He has to respond. So what number are you looking for, Dave?
It's the federal appropriation that triggers getting, seeing if the legislature wants to call in to decide what to do with it.
I don't think there was a dollar amount. I thought there were conditions.
Yeah, I think we switched.
So
it.
here's where we're at. Now go to page 10, and then it's in excess of $1 million. So for any acceptance or expenditure of federal funds under this paragraph in excess of $1 million, which is the bottom of page 10, the governor's office, if the funds
There we go.
are restricted by federal or state law.
If they're not restricted,
Yeah.
notify the legislature as
So
soon as
there's some
possible.
specifications. The one thing I do see is, I'm not sure why that shall is stricken out. I guess we did that in the original bill. The
And
governor's office.
so he has to notify the legislature and request action under 94206, which is pages 19 through 21, where they struck out management council and JAC
Yes.
meets to make a
So that's
recommendation or
then
not.
refers
Yeah,
to the process of how we do
yeah,
it.
I like it.
And so this is what we recommended. I'm shocked they made this amendment because there was.
Yeah, we were the ones that,
We
we
were
said
the
that, we said that this was the biggest problem our group had, and they, they kind of let it go, and then they made the change
So you
themselves. So
guys
that's
obviously
all right.
prevailed upon your colleagues on the House to make some
Subliminally.
rational
You
decisions.
persuaded Representative Nicholas because he's
Now-
the sponsor.
Now that we've kind of sorted this one out, is there anything else we need to talk about this bill before we go to public comment? Took a minute. Thank you, Sherry. You
Oh,
helped
well,
us a lot.
I would
so-
have taken you through the bill if.
No, but thank you. I think you also just earned you get to do that on the floor, so you got it down. So, good job. We appreciate
All
it.
right.
Carry.
I will
Sherry,
do
Sherry
that.
to carry.
Chairman just said.
All right.
Carry to carry.
You
As
see
long as
Sherry to
it's
carry.
not today, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anybody to testify in this bill, Karen? All right.
As long as Sherry doesn't do a concealed carry.
Yeah. And we, as always, we have your back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bill. Second.
All right. Any questions or amendments? I think it was a good amendment. House did good work.
I thought they did a great job.
All right, let's go ahead and call the roll on 150.
Thank you. On House Bill 150, Senator Guru.
Ruth.
Senator Guru.
Aye.
Senator Hicks.
Aye.
Senator Kinski.
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz.
Aye.
Chairman Perkins.
Aye.
5 ayes.
You know, the one thing that we need to understand before this goes to the floor is how this works together with the existing budget shortfall measures.
Right, and we can explain that. I'll get my notes out. I have that all written down and we.
Yeah, and don't, yeah, if you need, yeah, I think Dave, who wrote this? Who did it? Was it Dave? I think Dave Gruber wrote those
It
original
was,
budget fall
yes.
measures. And so
Yep.
don't be afraid to check in with Dave
I will do
and
that.
get that.
We'll get,
Okay.
and maybe we can amend this chart to reflect the current bill.
Yeah, I think a great idea.
Now remind me
Great idea.
how this fits in with budget shortfalls.
Well, that's just what we need to understand. This is, I don't know that, it seemed to me that
They
This-
kind of hold hands,
they
but
kinda hold
they
hands.
don't, it's,
Mr.
There's
Chairman.
yeah,
not a
what
lot
kicks
of-
this off is you've got to have this, what's it, sudden financial calamity or other occurrence. So you got to have this financial or public health calamity, and then the stuff kicks in.
And I think too, the way we talked about it in the working group, this is kind of the first piece. And then there are going to be other pieces as we work through this and work with the governor's office. So this is going to evolve, but really this is the first step to change fundamentally how we work with the governor's office when there's an emergency, and maybe getting away from some of the actually providing more transparency, avoiding the flex, super flex, B11, kind of mishmash that we have now, and kind of moving it towards here's a number and here's a set of circumstances. This triggers this, which triggers that, which includes us. And because now the way it is, it's just it's kind of a kludge.
It's a kludge.
Kludge is a good word for this. It's a kludge of ways to do something. Very hard for us as the Appropriations Committee at the end of the day, when we start a budget process, to go back through and say, okay, what happened after we left and how did the governor deal with each one of these things? It's all processes that we set up. It's not anything he's doing wrong at all. But as he goes through, it's kind of hard sometimes to unravel it and by its nature, it's just extremely complicated.
Well,
It's
and-
very situational and a whole bunch of small situations where this tries to provide a template so we can move forward and have it more transparent for all of us to see.
And you
Part of
pass a
the
budget.
necessity of this, because of the discussion of the CARES Act funding. Initially, there was this, I don't need that the legislature would be involved.
Right.
and
The crank memo.
Work with the governor to actually do the special session. This just cleans all
It does, and again, I'll just compliment the governor. I mean, when we were, when this came up and Speaker Harshman and I were working with him, I mean, he kind of had that thing and we had that discussion. We just said, just trust us. Just trust us to see what happens. And, and I think we developed a much better working relationship with the governor's office to try and make sure that he trusted us, and then we turned around and trusted him. And, was it perfect? No, but we wouldn't have been perfect if we had done it either. So, I think it's moving that right direction. And the budget shortfall just happens if it doesn't, you don't have to have a financial calamity for the budget shortfall measures to kick in. So it's just a budget shortfall if it's of a certain percentage.
And I think those other pieces, the B11 and those things will always have to be there in some measure for small things that come along. But what we need to do is just kind of thin that out to the day-to-day operation versus a calamity. Like,
Yeah.
the tunnel
Okay.
collapse or whatever.
So tell me, okay, I see on page 2, we refer to a standard budget.
Right.
Approved budget.
And honestly, the meat of what we're doing is on page 11, little I, two little I. If the funds are not restricted by federal or state law for a specified purpose, or are restricted by law but will not be expended as a supplemental addition for the program with the approved budget, shall notify, shall notify. That looks like it's written wrong, but anyway, as soon as possible, as practicable, and request legislative action provided by 94206. So that's a part of it, but then you go on to page 12 and it adds in, if the funds meet the provisions of paragraph 2 Romanet I, this subsection, they shall not be expended until the provisions of paragraph 2I are met, unless the governor notifies management council that the immediate expenditure of the funds. And that, I wonder if that notification, we might need to review that and see if that needs to be changed now that they changed some of that process, but maybe they do still notify management council. Anyway, that's kind of the meat of it.
What was the other bill where we talked about authorizing the legislature to meet remotely?
That was in the, that
That's
was in
in
there.
80,
That
the,
was the health,
Health
public
order.
health
The
officials.
pandemic.
Pandemic.
I wonder if we should, I don't know. Anyway.
Well, it's a good thought. I don't know. It'd be easier if we just amended our rules permanently to say that we can meet remotely depending on the circumstances.
You just, as you have to sort through the constitutional
Can we
language
just get a
on
different legal interpretation?
Anyway, I will have a better presentation for you guys. We kind of came up on this pretty quick, didn't we?
Yeah, this one kind of came up on us.
And we can tag team it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Sometime we should sit down and talk about that as a couple of lawyers and look at that constitutional language. It's really interesting. It's hard. As you look at that, as I was looking at the other day, it's just, this word also in there makes it really interesting. But anyway. Have we already taken the vote on 150, haven't we? All right. So next bill for our consideration is Earn While You Learn. Be wherever you're the most comfortable, Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to go downstairs.
Okay. We'll take action on your bill while you're gone. You got to at least be sitting up when you present.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, this bill, Learn While You Earn, is an ongoing project. It was inspired mostly by a lot of conversations with Representative Greer, who's done a lot of work. As you know, he's located in the basin. His local community college doesn't have the kind of programs that other community colleges, notably Sheridan and Gillette, have in terms of machine tools and those kinds of things. And there's been just sorts of efforts here and there, off and on over the years, to develop a program where a high school, sort of I guess a European style apprenticeship type program. So a student that's, say, a sophomore that's really interested in machine tools, and there's a local machine tool company that's willing to hire them, pay them a decent wage, and then work with that employer, with the high school, with the college, to see that instruction is given to that student in a sufficiently rigorous fashion that that experience starts counting towards either high school credit or degree credit, or towards a non-credit certificate that would enhance their employability upon graduation from either high school or junior college. So when I presented to Ed, they asked me to just walk through an example of how this funding, which is a $1 million appropriation, how it would work. So let's say you've got a young man and he's in, I don't know where you might have a machine shop in Jackson or Worland or wherever, and the employer hires him. He's a sophomore in high school. He works through the local high school shop teacher, who in turn works with a professor at one of the colleges, and they set up a program for this young person that so that they get credit. The compensation would be negotiated between all three parties, but typically what you're contemplating is if the supervisor at the job site spends time other than earning a profit for the company, that they've got to spend time in meetings with the high school teacher, the student, or the college to try and get the program squared around. There could be some compensation for that. The high school teacher, instead of their teaching duties regularly at the school, they might be supervising the student, helping compensate the school district for that cost. And likewise, the college for whoever's exercising the oversight. So the college instructor, you can do a lot by Zoom, but at some point that college instructor's got to get out and get about and actually see it. The CTE teachers at the high school level, their association really likes this because it leverages the resources of the employers. The high schools are not necessarily going to have the kind of advanced equipment that many of these employers do. So it leverages it there. So there's a lot here that's being left to negotiation between the parties. The hope is that this is going to be driven locally by the employers as opposed to these programs that come out of the U.S. Department of Labor that are top down and very paperwork intensive. So a quick run through of the bill, Mr. Chairman, on page 2, we just create some definitions. The definition that's received the most attention is on page 3 at the top. And that's lines 3 through 4. Chairman Greer and I limited it to the fields of instrumentation, technology, welding, or as a machinist or mechanic. Initially, we were concerned that if it was too broad, that people would see this as a huge new program. And these are ones that we knew there was very strong interest. Education Committee amended that to say skilled trades. They'd like to see that considered more broadly. Then on page 3, 502 creates the program with a series of provisions beginning on page 4 that any draw on this appropriation has to comply with the article. They have to work with the commission. The employer has to provide the student with employee paid career training. And page 5, they have to be enrolled.
Can I ask you a question
Yes,
about the
yes.
change that the Education Committee made?
Mm-hmm.
So when they do skilled trade, obviously I work with Representative Greer outside of the legislature and know what he did up at Wyoming Sugar. I've talked to a number of the people who have moved to Wyoming that manufacture various firearm equipment or ancillary or sometimes parts of guns. So one's here, and they've all said the same thing. They can't get machinists. They can't get here, and so they're trying to go into the local high schools and start this.
Yeah, this is a
program. So
recruitment
so with the change that the Department of Education, where I guess they eliminated that delineation, just said skilled trades. Is that what their amendment did? And so is that still work? Because ultimately this is driven by local employers. So it's skilled trade. It doesn't, whether it's welding, whether it might be construction, might be house construction, might be welding, might whatever it is, but it's driven by local employers. So we're not worried about this going off the rails because without local employers, it's not going to expand beyond your original intent.
I think that's exactly, Mr. Chairman. I'm hoping it doesn't go off the rails, but for instance, we heard from the Director of Economic Development in Rock Springs, there's expansion of the Trona mines underway, anticipation of 600 new skilled jobs, 600 over the next 3 to 5 years. And that the list of jobs they need did include welding machinery, but it included some others such as the construction trade. And so they feel comfortable that because the idea here is it's supposed to be employer driven, that it's not going to get too far afield.
Did you, and this is a re-referral, right?
It is a re-referral.
Okay, so I'll quit getting down the weeds. Keep going.
Well, so let me see. I was up to page 5, but I share your concern about making it too broad. I just, sometimes just a leap of faith involved in these things.
Yeah.
What exactly is instrumentation technology as an eligible field? What is that? That's what I thought.
Yeah, I don't know. It means something to people in the CTE field.
Well, we need to find out.
Well, it's gone now. It's just replaced by skilled trades.
Okay.
Yeah, they amended it to just say skilled trades. They struck out those very specific references.
So a skilled trade is anything the local employer and the college agree is a skilled trade.
In the high school.
In the high school. And so is this, and this will be, is this going to be one of those things where, is this going to be like through BOCES? Are they going to get dual credit?
So that's a great question, Mr. Chairman. They will get dual and concurrent credit. That's part of it. And that's another subsequent part of the bill.
Okay, keep going.
But no. I do want to circle back to that because it relates to it does relate to the appropriation. Representative Greer and I went through a lot of discussion about what we thought about is amending the BOCES statute so that they could assess a mill or two. And then there was local vote option. But then there was all this discussion about the community college funding and how, so we thought that at this point, there'd be a bill moving through the legislature that was going to change how the community colleges were funded because it's an issue. Worland doesn't have a community college district. Do you levy a mill or a sales tax, a quarter-cent economic development tax in Sheridan to help fund a Worland kid to get credit through the Worland High School, through the Sheridan College? Is that equitable? Does that make sense? And so finally we said, let's just put $1 million appropriation and get this thing started.
It's really fair if it's really fair for the folks in Washakie. It's not fair for the folks in Sheridan.
Well, I don't know about that. I just don't know about that.
Anyway.
We've got enough machine tool companies there that just the more folks it's about building critical mass, knowing not everybody who passes through your school will stay there.
And I got to tell you, I mean, so at the end, since it goes to the appropriation, I mean, that's the number one thing I hear from employers is we don't have enough skilled labor in the state. And we're so college oriented that college is the only way to go. You got to have a college degree and you just, there are so many great ways to make a living. In fact, as a lawyer, that was the greatest revelation to me is how many different ways there are to make a really great living. In fact, you actually become wealthy and most of them don't have anything to do with your college degree.
Technology is?
No. It's still on.
All right.
So anyway, let's go to the appropriation, Mr.
Okay.
Senator Kinski.
So, Mr. Chairman, it's a one-time appropriation of $1 million that would flow through the Community College Commission to be allocated as provided in the bill, which is it's negotiated out between an employer, a school district, and the community college system. It's not intended for wages for the student, but purely to cover the excess costs that the college, the school district, and the employer may encounter in the course of the program. The reason that funding over and above the ordinary funding stream is necessary is, and you may have had these same conversations with your community colleges, it's one thing to have a class for 20 or 30 students. It's one thing to have an apprenticeship program for 2 or 3. And this is going to be onesies, twosies, threesies until we really get a critical mass going somewhere in the state that it becomes much more economical. But this is common in other states. It's just uncommon in Wyoming, but we've really got to get something like this going.
What's the longer game? This is a one-time appropriation of $1 million. What's the hope that this bill and the $1 million buys you at the end?
The hope is that it stands up a program that we have a successful model enough so that we can go out locally and try and raise funding to perpetuate the program.
And the differentiation between this and Wyoming Works?
Wyoming Works is aimed at non-traditional students, working families, getting back into credential programs. This is aimed at hopefully as young as sophomores. there's a companion bill moving along here that Representative Greer and I are on that is to adopt a student learner exception under
To
the
the-
federal OSHA program.
For 18, for. they
So
don't have to be
16-year-olds can go into a machine shop.
Yeah, all right. Okay. Any other questions for Senator Kinski? Thank you. Is there anybody to give public testimony on this? Okay. Well, so wait a second. Who's on the line for us? Is it?
Well, to begin, we do have Dr. Caldwell. from the
Okay,
Community
Dr.
College
Caldwell.
Commission, and then we have a couple of others.
Director, how are you? Doctor, how are you?
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm here to only provide some support and any clarifying comments that I may regarding this bill, particularly on the re-referral side. This bill is aligned with the Attainment Council. That documentation was provided to the Senate Education Committee, as Senator Kinski just shared. It does fit within the concept of the statewide college system strategic plan. I wanted to mention that. And a few things that I wanted to mention regarding some of the comments that were already made is that skilled trades are college. And I hope that we can get where we can broaden out what we mean by that beyond the traditional 4-year. The skilled trades, the CTE programs are in fact credentialed programs that even have the capacity for bachelors of applied science transfer. So this is an important bill to advance our attainment for the long-term focus of economic vitality for our state. As Senator Kinski shared, this is focused on those high school students, which is really important to get them engaged in what these different industries offer, particularly through these types of trades. So I'm happy to answer any questions related to comments related to this bill. We did provide a lot of information for Senator Kinski and Senate Education to try to help move this forward because it does advance the state in many, many ways. So happy to answer any questions I have. Our CFO also on here, should you have any questions around the funding. But in terms of this re-referral, we're happy to provide anything that you would like. I do want to share that Ms. Erin Taylor, the Executive Director for the Wyoming Association of Community College Trustees, could not be here. And I don't speak for WACT in any way, I'm an agency, but she wanted me to let you know that the association does have this bill listed, and you can see their website for their support of this particular bill. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions for you, for the commission and the agency.
Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. Appreciate it. Any questions for Dr. Caldwell? Thank you, Dr. Caldwell. Is Ms. Johnson your CFO? Ms. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just for a clarification, our CFO is Mr. Larry Buckholz, and
Oh, okay.
I just saw his face pop up there.
I didn't see his face. It's not like the other faces on the screen. Mr. Buckholz, welcome. Do you have what information do you have for us this morning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have a lot to add. Senator Kinski did a great job explaining the bill. One thing that I would say is, there was questions about this one-time appropriation. There is language in the bill that allows the commission to come back and ask for exception requests should that funding not last out till this program is set to sunset currently in 2026. So we'll get some experience in the first year or two of getting this program deployed, and then we'll see what kind of funding needs there still might be, and the commission will do exception requests for that.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Buckholz? Mr. Buckholz, how far down the road does the $1 million get us? You said a year. You think it gets us a year and a half, or 2 years? What do you think?
Well, Mr. Chairman, we've talked about that a little bit internally. We don't have experience, so we don't know exactly what our trends are going to be. But this appropriation initially pretty much has to get us through the first 2 years. It becomes effective on the 1st of July, 2021, which is obviously after we have an opportunity to do an exception request for the 23-24 budget. So the earliest we could do an exception request would be the supplemental budget in the spring of 2023.
Oh, well, that's you, but that's not appropriations. So anyway. Okay, you have to keep that in mind, Senator Kinski. Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Buckholz? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Buckholz.
Yes, sir.
So let's go to, is Ms. Johnson with the state agency? So let's go, we had Ms. Johnson, we had Ms. Delancey was up there. Ms. Johnson, welcome. What do you have for us this morning?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Lisa Johnson on behalf of the Wyoming Association for Career and Technical Education. And we support this bill because it provides cost-effective, focused learning opportunities for high school students. And just one quick statistic from the Society for Human Resource Management, they cite that 70% of companies say that when high school students have this kind of learning opportunity or internship, that they're more likely to land a college internship. And then 45% of those companies say that these students are very likely to get a permanent job with that company upon completing training. So we ask for your favorable support of this measure.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Johnson?
No, could you send that to Karen Vaughn at the Appropriations Committee, please, Lisa?
Yes, thank you, sir.
Those series of facts, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Appreciate your time this morning. Mr. Delancey, welcome.
Morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Cindy Delancey. I too am here in support of Senate File 127 and really want to commend and express my appreciation for Senator Kinski and Representative Greer's hard work. This has been a bill that has been in the works for several years, and it provides a direct pathway for our high school students to get that on-the-job training. Much of the feedback that I hear from members of the Wyoming Business Alliance is that students upon graduation maybe don't possess all the necessary skills for 21st century job readiness. And so by, nothing beats hand-on experience. And by giving Wyoming students Wyoming opportunities is really what this bill seeks to do. I would like to highlight just in anticipation of the companion bill, which is 239, that's coming your way at some point. It is essential that these bills stay on a parallel path together, because what Representative Greer has done is that he has keyed in on an exception in the OSHA regs that carves out opportunity for student learners. And so we have to have that statutory language providing for student learners for Senate File 127 to work as well. So just a heads up that 239 and House Bill 239 and Senate File 127 are companion bills and really also serve as a recruiting tool for many of our businesses as well. To be able to say that Wyoming has been able to come on par with what other states are doing in this area sure helps when it comes into a discussion about recruiting and attracting a business to Wyoming, that we're able to tap into our next generation of workers. So for those reasons, I know it has $1 million appropriation on it. I think that's a small investment for the greater good that this bill can accomplish, and is exactly what we need right now at this time. So for those reasons, Mr. Chairman, I ask for your favorable consideration. And in closing, I also would like to wish your committee member, Senator Guru, a happy birthday. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Is Senator Guru a St. Patrick's Day baby? Oh, yeah, okay, the 18th. Okay, good. We'll have to make sure, thank you. We'll have to make sure we embarrass Senator Guru when we go into session. Appreciate that, Cindy, thank you. Is there anybody else in the waiting room? Catherine, did you have anything for us this morning?
What did she say?
She said not on this bill.
Oh, okay.
All right, thank you. We'll go ahead and close off public comment then. So again, it's only the appropriation members. What's your pleasure? I think it's one of those things. I think throwing some, this is one of those things that's a great investment in the future, and we shouldn't be afraid to look forward and spend some money to get it done. So anyway, let's go ahead and Karen, Senator Hicks left a proxy vote here. I'll give it to you. He's got an eye on here, but let's go ahead and, is there any amendments or anything that anything you want to do with your bill? Anything you want to change the appropriation up or down?
No,
Okay.
I hesitated to even ask for an appropriation, but I don't know how else to get the thing going.
Sometimes you have to spend money sometimes to get things done. So let's go ahead and call the roll then, Karen.
Senator Guru,
Aye.
Senator Kinski,
Aye.
Senator Steinmetz,
Aye.
Chairman Perkins. And with Senator Hicks's proxy, we have 5 ayes.
Did we get through the list, or we got one more bill? We got one more bill? We're done until noon. No, it's adjournment or noon?
Right, you are meeting again
Adjournment.
upon adjournment.
Boy, I thought yesterday I thought I was just getting, because I get lots of multiple emails. And so I thought it was just, so when they came through, I saw the one and I saw, okay, I thought the other one was just a duplicate. So anyway,
Would you like us to adjourn?
we have to now because